Hey, reader, welcome back to the channel. This is Centaur here, and today we are looking at the weak side special rule. This one is present in the rule book, although there are not very many armored vehicles that get it. Admittedly, the two that do get it are, well, they got their own fan bases, right? In this case, you have the Jag Panzer 38, the Hetzer, as well as the M4 Sherman in its earliest variants. You got some of those weak side sort of stuff going on with some of the earlier Shermans. Following up on the last two videos that we did talking about in this part of the series, talking about reinforced frontal armor and armored all around, one might anticipate that something that gives you a points reduction for something that you might be able to plan a little bit around would be considered good, or maybe even murky at best. More on that next week as we talk about the vulnerable special rule. But the weak sides one, and this might be a bit of a hot take, something of a spicy take, I don't like it. I think it's actually objectively bad. And it's going to come out weird because of where we're placing vulnerable on our spectrum of good, bad, and murky. But I honestly think this one's really bad. And I've already had a discussion with Ian about this. I'm not saying Ian is wrong. He makes really good points. By all means, listen to him. And I'm not saying don't run your Shermans, don't run your Hetzers. I run both. But I am honest about the fact that if you take it with weak sides, you're inviting problems. So let's take a look at it. In terms of theme, this is once again, something I'm really glad about. Look at this. It's so simple. It's so easy to understand exactly what we're talking about. So we know whether or not vehicles should get this benefit or not, and what it does. It's so easy, right? There's 3 lines, right, in one paragraph. And this is designed to reflect armor where the frontal armor was, whatever the standard rating would be. It falls into the range of a light tank or medium tank or a heavy tank. But the sides were made to be thinner, basically about the same and similar to what the rear armor was. The thinking behind these being that they would be used in an aggressive posture, pushing forward against the enemy, or in a defensive posture facing directly at where the enemy is going to come. And so the result is that all that side and rear armor is kind of wasted, right? You're not actually going to be using it very often. It's not going to come up dramatically. And so why add extra weight, which means either less armament or less ammunition or less speed, both of which could be extremely useful, or just greater size, right? In order to make up for, whatever it is that you want to put inside the vehicle. And so toward that end, they said, hey, we can make this a little bit thinner. We don't have to make it as thick and as durable as other parts of the tank are. And so the result is that the side arcs of the tank receive the same pen plus 2 that you would give to the rear arc, okay? And so this special rule, which appears on page 151, simple, straightforward. It means that your damage value 9+ tanks, which are all of the ones that get weak sides so far in the game, all of them are counted as giving you a +2 to your penetration, other than the front arc, which is still a +0. It's also worth noting it does not affect the top armor. Okay, obviously, because it's weak sides, so your top armor has not changed. This is going to come up again next week as well. But it does mean that you're effectively damage value 7+, basically, from the sides and the rear. And instead of being your damage value 9+ from the front. It means that you're about as defensible as a standard 8+ vehicle, and you're being hit as if you basically had a damage value of 7 if you weren't adding any penetration modifiers. For this, you get a 10-point cost reduction. And we see this both if we compare the Hetzer to similar damage value 9 heavy AT gun forward facing vehicles like the Stug 3. We also see this with the fact that you can remove weak sides from M4 Shermans by paying 10 points on one of their profiles. And this is basically exactly how it worked in 2nd edition, including the point cost. There's no dramatic change. That's kind of how it works. So the question comes down to, does this help, right? Because you tell yourself, well, you're taking a medium armored vehicle and you're making it cheaper. So you're getting the same amount of firepower. If you can keep enemies at the front, or heck, even at the rear, it's exactly the same, right? You haven't actually lost anything by having this. You're just 10 points cheaper, right? And we made a whole point talking about how easily catches fire is great, right? I mean, that was actually like our first big hit video. It was the first one that I got that ever hit 1,000 views. And we said, even though that was a 5-point reduction, that thing was awesome. The reason why easily catches fire is awesome is because it literally never comes up. You have to get glanced or damaged, get exactly the number for being set on fire. And then it adds pins and it might come back to bite you, right? That's all it does, right? It doesn't actually make you more likely to be destroyed. It's not like volatile fuel, which we're going to be talking about in a future video. That one, it basically never came up. The problem here is that a 10-point reduction, which could be as much as 20 to 30 points for your total army if you ran double or triple medium tanks, which is a very unique build that I would prefer not to do. So please don't ask for it. And so you want to play series. If you do, I guess I'll do it because sure, if you ask for it. You guys are great. You guys just got us to 1,000 subscribers. By the time I'm recording this, this is the first video I've recorded since we hit 1,000 because you guys are awesome and you preempted me and I was not expecting you. So thank you so much, guys, for doing your job. You guys are awesome, and I love you so much. But it means, hey, like, look, if you guys are gonna do it, sure, I'll give it to you guys. You guys are cool. But the reality is, you're gonna be getting a 10-point reduction to your army, maybe 20, right? I mean, that's the more likely scenario. But it's going to net you nothing, right? The 10-point reduction gets you 1 extra regular infantry, which is not going to dramatically change your army or its effectiveness. It can net you 2 submachine guns, which in the case of Americans or Germans, you either were not taking very many of in the first place, or you already were planning on buying. So I'm not sure that actually gets you very much in the grand scheme of things. It gets you 1 additional SMG or a BAR/assault rifle, depending on whether you're, again, Americans or Germans. You can maybe upgrade the veterancy on 1 unit, right? You know, you could upgrade an anti-tank rifle from regular to veteran. You could upgrade 1 officer from regular to veteran, or from inexperienced to regular. That's all you can do with this, right? It is not going to dramatically move the battlefield, right? Unlike one of the special rules we're going to look at next week, okay, where it actually can pretty reasonably move the needle because of the fact that you can very easily take 2 or 3 of them. Realistically, you're getting 10, maybe 20 points. That's all you're actually getting. And since it comes on damage value 9s that are worth at the minimum 145 points, and that's for the Flampanzer variant of the Hetzer, so you have to run this weak sides, basically DV7, except for the front that's DV9 tank, up to basically point-blank range with the enemy. Yes, you technically have a 12-inch range, but you don't want to be hitting on 5s with a flamethrower that runs out on 2s. Same chance you hit is the same chance you run out of fuel. That's not good. You can run it on a 195-point Sherman, which is fine, and it's actually one of the Shermans that I don't mind using. Again, just because something is considered a bad special rule for me doesn't mean that I think you shouldn't run these things, okay? You know, you can run them, okay? I tend to get rid of it and just run them at 205, okay? But, you know, like, you can run it there, and it's perfectly fine. But that's still almost 200 points out of, I mean, that's a 5th, a 6th of your army, depending on what points level you're running at. Or you can run it on a full Hetzer at 205 with the heavy AT gun attached, which is, again, very expensive, right? So, like, how much are you going to be able to really maximize on this? The answer is not much, okay? All it does is make you more vulnerable to enemy fire than you would have been before, and without much of a trade-off, okay? And so, since it's treating that damage value 9 like a damage value 8, with the exception of from the front, okay? And considering that for all of these vehicles, their front arcs are dramatically smaller than their side arcs, realize that for most of your surface area, this is not great. Furthermore, to get from DV8 to DV9, you paid about 20 points to make that jump, right? So realistically, just looking at it, why would I run a 195-point Sherman when I could run like a, 160, 180-point Chaffee that's going to hit with exactly the same gun? It's going to be basically just as defensible, right? You're down 1 from the front, but everything else is exactly the same. And you have Recce, which means you probably don't get hurt as much. Why would I do that, right? And this is the reason why in the competitive meta, we don't tend to see a lot of Shermans. We tend to see more Chafees, because the Chaffee just does what the Sherman does, just for slightly cheaper, right? Because it wasn't paying for that DV9 and then potentially having to compromise on that DV9 in order to try to bring the cost back down, okay? So how do you use it? How do you compensate for having weak sides so that you can take advantage of these things? Because I'll be honest, I went out and bought a Hetzer. It's not like I picked up a Hetzer in a mystery box. I like the Hetzer. I think it looks awesome. I think the Czechs did a really good job in terms of thinking through design on this thing. And I think from a concept as a self-propelled, well, as an assault gun, right? You know, as a tank destroyer, I think it's a really good design. I think it's a really good design. So I really like it. So how do you make it work? Because I'm the channel that says, hey, if you like something, run it, right? Even if the meta guys tell you that you're wrong, because sure, find a way, right? You know, we're so early on in the edition. There's no reason to write something off just yet. First and foremost, if you can place one or both, if you can fit into such a space with still having the ability to maneuver a bit, one or two of your sides near buildings, ruins, or forests, you're going to be in a good position. Obviously, these are not fully, these are not full-on protections. If you put yourself so that you're abutting a ruin, one of the benefits is if they'd have to fire through the ruin in order to get to you, they can't see you, right? Even if they can physically look and see the model, you're not allowed to see through that because we assume a plume of smoke, extra bits hanging out. We just don't have those because we want them to be playable. You're not allowed to draw a line of sight through it, which is really good. Secondly, with forests and ruins, yes, an enemy can move into them to try to attack you. Just remember, because of the general footprint that most ruins and forests have, if they shoot at you and they fail to destroy you or immobilize you, you can always just turn and face them and you'll probably be hitting them at point blank range, which is fantastically good, right? And third, of course, in the case of a building, most units are not going to be able to camp inside of a building and shoot at you with anything serious that's going to hurt you, right? Panzerfaust being one of the few exceptions. Most people are going to be looking at something that's maybe a Pen +2 or Pen +3 that they can actually put in a squad or on an AT team and get in close to you, right? So you're going to be relatively safe from a lot of the stuff that can get into a building and actually shoot at you, okay? In addition, you can, of course, just place another armored vehicle on one or both, if you want to devote that many armored vehicles, sides of you. And then that way, if they don't fully obscure your sides, in the case of a Hetzer, the Hetzer's pretty small. I mean, it's a relatively small thing for being damage value 9. And so you might be able to get away with blocking it with, say, like, call it 2 Daka Panzer 3s, and you might be fully blocked on that side, right? And if that's the case, that's really good news for you. If they don't, they're at least giving you hard cover, which is fantastic. And if you want to go a little bit cheaper while still doing, say, anti-infantry or anti-personnel work, which technically you can do with something like a Hetzer, but it's not particularly great, blocking with something like a Panzer I, or in the case of an M4 Sherman, something like an M3 Stuart or an M13 MGMC or something like that, can also work just fine because they are armored vehicles and they will give you a 4+ save as you're moving up, which is also good. You can also run it near a board edge. That will help to remove one side where people won't be able to shoot at you unless they have an outflanking vehicle, in which case they might be able to get into that side arc and shoot at you. Now, flip side, if they're outflanking, they might as well just come in behind you and hit you in the rear, in which case weak sides hasn't really hurt you anymore, right? So there's that, especially if it's something like an assault gun like the Hetzer here, where it doesn't have a turret that can turn around and hit it. They would have to perform 2 pivots in order to get around to hit you. It is pretty reasonable, in my mind, that a rear shot is what is more likely to happen to you. So in that sense, it doesn't hurt that much, but that is something just to think about and to be concerned about, okay, if you want to use the near board edge approach for doing stuff. That being said, sometimes people place objectives relatively close to edges, and so it's not necessarily bad to line up on an edge. The other option too, and this is less reliable just because, again, you have slightly less control over this, but it is a reasonable way to deal with the problem. Because of the fact that everything that has weak sides is damage value 9, if you just headhunt everything that's Pen +3 to Pen +7, and you just remove those assets first, then you don't have anything to worry about, right? Because even a Pen +2 autocannon, which can be really good in the right hands, getting to your side at point blank range is only Pen +5, which is only 4s to glance, 5s for full damage. That's not actually a really good chance that they're going to knock you out, right? And if they do get to point blank range and they don't immobilize you, you can always just advance, or in the case of the Sherman, just declare a fire order, as long as you aren't turret jammed. And you can just shoot them now at point blank range with Pen +5 becomes Pen +6, possibly more than that if you do end up hitting a side arc or whatever, depending on how they were able to reach you. I mean, you could very easily crack them open instead. And so toward that end, do I think you shouldn't run something with weak sides? No, I think you can totally run it. I run them myself. I am honest about the fact that I don't like the weak sides because of the fact that it's only a 10-point reduction on things that are so expensive that you aren't really going to be able to maximize off of it, right? Whereas things like reinforced frontal armor can come on something as simple as something damage value 8, right? It's relatively cheap. You can spam out multiples of them, but you're getting the benefit as if you had paid to upgrade a bunch of things to damage value 9, right? Weak sides, not so much. Now, next week when we talk about vulnerable, this is going to come up because the vulnerable rule is a quite more dramatic reduction in points by comparison to weak sides. And even though it's basically weak sides plus, I'm of the mind that can actually be a benefit because of how many points you can save overall and what kind of assets that can then give you. But more on that next week. But what do you think? Do you think I'm being a little too harsh on weak sides? Do you think that this is definitely bad and anybody who says that they should run it is ridiculous because they're making themselves way too exposed to way too low of a pen value weapon? Let us know down in the comments below, and I will see you next time.